The king of football, Pele, has died.
Oh, Pele, right through the wall. How about that one then?
Regarded as the greatest player of all time, he won 3 World Cups with Brazil. Tonight, the country mourns a national hero. The players and fans around the world have begun paying tribute, and Wembley's famous arch has been relit in the colours of Brazil. We'll have all the reaction. Also ahead, Ukraine under fire. Russia launches a barrage of attacks, forcing millions to take shelter. And an icon in the world of fashion, Dame Vivienne Westwood, has died peacefully at her home in London.
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. He was unquestionably one of the greatest footballers who ever lived. But to many, Pele was much more than just a player. He turned the game into an art, winning 3 World Cups for Brazil and setting goal-scoring records that still stand today. He was respected for his good grace, his humour and the friendship he extended to others both inside and outside the game. We'll bring you all the reaction to Pele's death from around the world. But first, our sports editor Steve Scott looks back on a footballer who inspired generations.
The moment they heard, they started to come to pay their own tributes at the hospital where Brazil's most famous son closed his eyes for the very last time. They will always remember him here as the man who put the beautiful into the beautiful game.
Pele, right through the wall. How about that one then?
Pele, short in name, but will live long in the memory. The only footballer to have won 3 World Cups, and for many, he was the best ever to play the game. Edson Arantes do Nascimento was born in Brazil in 1940. The moniker Pele stuck when, as a young boy, he was unable to pronounce the name of a goalkeeper called Pele. He joined Santos in Sao Paulo, aged just 15, and within 2 years would be a household name around the world, scoring 6 goals as Brazil became world champions.
The first World Cup, I was 17 years old. And then everybody think, my God, you was difficult for you, you know, you are very young, but I say, I swear, it was like a dream.
His career total of 1,281 goals remains unsurpassed. This was number 1,000. His feats for both club and country put him centre stage, away from football too.
After giving me ball, here I do these, go. Easy.
It is ironic that for such a prolific goal scorer, he will also be remembered for the one that got away. Pele even shouted goal when the ball left his head in Brazil's World Cup clash with England in 1970, only for Gordon Banks to somehow deny him. It took the greatest of saves to keep the great man out. His personal life was complicated. Married 3 times, his son Edinho was sent to prison for 12 years for laundering drugs money. Ever since surgery to remove kidney stones in 2014, there have been constant struggles with ill health.
I award you the Olympic Order.
But 2 years later in Rio, he was well enough to receive the highest award the Olympic Games can offer. And as he returned to hospital earlier this month, the Brazilian team at the World Cup in Qatar carried his flag, celebrated his name, as the football family and beyond wished him well. But tonight, when the man whose name instantly meant so much to so many died, he was surrounded by his family. He will forever be football's first global superstar, of whom the artist Andy Warhol once said, "Pele was one of the few who contradicted my theory. Instead of 15 minutes of fame, he will have 15 centuries."
Well, tonight, as news of Pele's death spread around the world, today's best players recognised the impact that he had on the game they love. To many, Pele was their idol, a player with so much talent who did it all with a smile. Martin Stew reports on how the world has reacted.
With a solemn face, Brazilians were delivered the news they'd been dreading.
The
King Pele has left us. From Brazil to Blackpool.
We will now reflect on the greatest of footballing lives.
Football fans applauded as one for the man who lifted the beautiful game to new heights. Jeff Hurst, who played against him, tweeting, "For me, Pele remains the greatest of all time. I was proud to be on the pitch with him." Modern-day stars also paid homage to their hero. Mbappe tweeting, "The king of football has left us, but his legacy will never be forgotten." Beckham said it was his beautiful game, whilst Brazil's current golden boy Neymar said before Pele, 10 was just a number. And the modern game's greatest simply said, "Rest in peace."
He was one of life's nice guys.
Those who worked alongside him for decades say Pele was just as impressive off the pitch.
Apart from all of his talent and all of his fame, and to some extent all of his wealth, he was just down to earth, thoroughly likeable. As far as I can remember, no one's ever said anything bad about him.
When Maradona died 2 years ago, Pele said he one day hoped they could play football together in the sky. Perhaps now they can. Tonight, the home of English football is illuminated in Brazilian colours, a tribute to the man who lit up every pitch he played on.
Reactions to the death of Pele. He was 82. On to other news now, and millions of people in Ukraine have been forced to flee to underground shelters as Russia launched a huge missile strike on the country. Under attack, the capital Kyiv, along with several other cities, including Lviv in the west and Kharkiv in the east. At least 6 people were killed, but that number could rise, as Martha Fairley reports.
It is a sound now all too familiar in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. From 7 this morning, explosions could be heard across the city. A massive barrage of Russian missiles aimed at the country's power networks in a war of attrition. The attack, which lasted 5 hours, driving people underground to find safety. Anastasia, a medic on call, was forced to take shelter in a metro station, but is growing weary of the constant attacks. We are just tired of this, she said. Yes, we are trying to react and go to the shelter, but this interrupts our life. We don't know how long the war will last. It's hard to be afraid every day and put your life on hold. Other cities also came under fire. Above Lviv, near the Polish border, there were smoke trails from missile attacks that have left 90% of the city without electricity.
I think it's important to note that the targeting of civilian national infrastructure and indeed civilian areas is against the Geneva Conventions. Russia is breaking international law in what it's doing, not only with its invasion, but also with the targeting it's carrying out. And there will be a response from the rest of the world to that type of behaviour.
Ukrainian officials claim 69 missiles were fired by Russia and 54 of them intercepted by air defence systems. On the outskirts of Kyiv, emergency services worked to clear the rubble after several homes and a medical facility were damaged or destroyed in what is the 10th such large-scale attack by Russia on Ukraine. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Benjamin Netanyahu has been sworn in as Prime Minister of Israel for a record 6th time. He'll lead what's been described as the most right-wing and religiously conservative government in Israel's history. Mr Netanyahu remains on trial for fraud, breach of trust and accepting bribes. He denies all the charges. The incoming boss of the TUC, the umbrella group for unions, has been setting out his position over this winter's wave of strikes. Paul Novak has warned the government can't wish away the ongoing pay disputes. We spoke to our political correspondent, Tom Sheldrick, earlier. So, Tom, what does Mr Novak hope to achieve then?
And Lucrezia, he wants significant pay rises for workers, particularly in the public sector, who are facing the rising cost of living at the moment. He's a new face at the top of the TUC, but he is not stepping back from that aim, or indeed the approach, which has seen 6 months of major industrial action already. Paul Novak told me today that it makes sense indeed to consider more coordinated walkouts between different trade unions and sectors in the new year, and he accused the government today of sabotaging hopes of resolving these disputes by not getting around the negotiating table.
Well, I think it's the government that needs to take a different approach. Unions have been very clear from the outset of these disputes. They're prepared to sit down and negotiate pay with ministers and with public sector employers. Well, there can't be movement unless there are talks, and the government has refused to engage in meaningful pay talks with our unions. I don't know how they think they can resolve a pay dispute without having talks.
Well, ministers don't want to open themselves up to a series of different negotiations. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, said today that the government is not going to be held to ransom and there is no magic wand to come up with money that the country doesn't have. So both sides are still talking pretty tough. Border Force staff are among those who've been on strike again today and will be tomorrow. And planned walkouts by NHS and rail workers and others in January are due to cause more disruption.
All right, Tom, thank you. And finally, the world of fashion is also mourning the passing of one of its great icons. Dame Vivienne Westwood has died at the age of 81, a pioneer of the punk scene. Back in the 1970s, she went on to dress some of the biggest names of a generation. She was an activist and passionate campaigner against climate change. Her irreverent views on the establishment were often reflected on the catwalk, bucking all trends. She was one of the original influencers, unafraid to do her own thing.
I'm lucky because I own my own company and I've never had to work for somebody else, you know, a businessman telling you what to do. It must be awful when you can't do exactly, you know, what you feel for and you're having to try and do something else, and there's all this pressure put upon you to be commercial in some way. I've always relied on what I like. That's my only criterion. And then if I like it, I just hope other people do.
Dame Vivienne Westwood, who has died at the age of 81. And that is all from us for tonight. So from me and all of the team, good night.